Welcome into a special edition, a reaction show of Inside Carolina. Gio Lopez commits to North Carolina, the quarterback. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and our sponsors. Shout out to Big Game USA. The football is behind me. Gio Lopez comes to Carolina. He'll be slinging this around Kenan Stadium in the fall. Check out the video.
You think you know North Carolina? It's not just the Smoky Mountains and the Old Well. This is Kenan Stadium, where the Jordan Fly Elite game ball makes its debut and its homecoming. Born to fly, built for Carolina. Snag your Carolina blue today.
Jason, with the news, Ryan Brown has entered the transfer portal after being at Carolina for 100 days, maybe. Came in December, out in April. Carolina has added quarterback Gio Lopez from South Alabama. I watched some highlights against App State and a couple of his other games. He's a playmaker. He can make plays. He's a shorter, stockier, thicker quarterback, lefty. Sort of reminds me the way he runs of Sam Howell, maybe a Darian Durant type. You've seen some other comparisons, or you have some other comparisons. What do you see in Gio Lopez as the newest North Carolina quarterback?
He's an intriguing addition for sure. That Sam Howell comparison is really interesting. I do see that as a runner. He's listed at about 6'2", 220. I'm not sure he's a full 6 foot. He's on the stubbier side, but he does shed a lot of tackles. He averaged 4.42 yards per carry after contact this season, which is healthy, right? You don't see quarterbacks do that all that often. And he was one of those guys that did that. So you're getting a true dual threat player. I think actually in a lot of ways he was more of a threat with his legs at times than he was as a thrower for them, which is interesting because both of the guys that they've gone after in the transfer portal, Brown, who, basically as far as his career at North Carolina, it looks an awful lot like Grandpa Simpson walking in and putting his hat down and then turning around and walking out and putting his hat back on and walking right out the door.
Here today, gone today.
Yeah. Here today, gone today. But, we never knew you. But in each case, they've gone after guys that were very much dual threat type guys that were threats with their legs as much as with their arm. And, Brown was a guy that when he played for Purdue, they ran him as much as they threw with him. And with Lopez as well, like I said, 4.2 yards per carry after contact. Now, to be fair, you have to grade on a curve a little bit because he was, 2.8 yards per carry after contact when they played at LSU. So, those cats are a little different. But still a guy that had a lot of success with his legs. He's a real threat in the read game and in the quarterback run game, and a creative player who can make plays on the run. He did show that as well. So a lot to like in those areas, especially, and bring some things to the table as a guy that if you're going to pound the football and then essentially try to gain some advantages with the quarterback run game, he fits a lot of what you're wanting to do with that.
Yeah, and he can sling it around a little bit. We talked a little bit off air about some of his stats, just sort of break those down for folks. I think it's an interesting look at what he does best and what he's capable of doing, especially coming from the left side. But your thoughts here on his numbers when you look at the focus grades and all the various quadrants that you're throwing to.
Yeah, he did actually – statistically, he did the majority of his damage on throws behind the line of scrimmage. So, that's not exciting, but I will say out of his behind the line of scrimmage throws, he missed 4 all season. He was 11 for 11 to the left, 51 of 55 between the numbers, and 8 of 8 on the outside right. So he did pass those tests in terms of when you have to make just a quick, accurate throw. He got it out quickly and got it on guys and completed passes and had a lot of success there. Now, interestingly, a lot of the rest of his success came down the field on 20-plus yard throws. So that's where he did the majority of his damage in terms of touchdowns and didn't throw a bunch of picks down on those either. So, he sort of was behind the line of scrimmage and down the field, throwing it down on verticals and that sort of thing. That's kind of the offense that they ran at South Alabama, Major Applewhite's offense, where they asked him to push the ball down the field, to make some bucket throws and that sort of thing. And when he was throwing, a lot of times he was chucking it. So actually some similarities to Howell in that respect as well, although Howell was an elite deep ball thrower. I mean, the Howell to De'Ami Brown connection was a big deal in those years in Chapel Hill. Howell was, again, he was a runner who did a lot with his legs and then paired that with that elite deep ball. And that's a pretty good combination. I don't think there's anything that Lopez does that is elite. But I do think he's shown flashes of being a good deep ball thrower and can do some damage there. And again, very similar to Howell as a runner, the kind of guy who you watch him run and he's not Michael Vick, he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not just going to run away from you. He's not a speed guy like that. I mean, Brown is actually a good bit faster than him. But like Howell, there are a lot of those cases where you see him start to run and, oh, well, that guy's got, and he just sheds the tackle and guys just kind of fall off him. He's, again, 6 foot, about 220. I think he's actually probably closer to 5'11 and a half, eyeballing him on the tape, but he's thick and guys have trouble wrapping up on him and getting him to the ground. And that's a good quality. So, and the other thing that he shows is, he makes some throws outside the pocket once he gets on the move. If he's outside the pocket, he did show some creativity and the ability to make some of those throws on the run and all of that. Now, the ball placement, in my view, was pretty inconsistent, or less consistent than I would like to see. I would like to see him be more consistently accurate in across all the passing zones. And there's still some work to do there. Throwing to the left, interestingly, and he's a lefty, you'd expect him to actually be best throwing to his left. He was not as accurate as he was throwing to his right. I think some of that has to do with mechanics. His footwork is kind of messy, and there are times where he's just throwing from an open body. And, he's not a super strong arm guy. He actually has to, when he's throwing downfield, he has to actually have his feet more behind him and to get his body into it. He can't just flick it. He's not Mike Vick with being able to just flick the ball downfield. So in those cases when he's, kind of already kind of spun open with that front shoulder, I think that's where the accuracy starts to suffer a little bit. The ball will flutter on him and you get the placement not quite so good. Thrown to the right, he's actually significantly stronger. And I think part of that is because he actually has to, his mechanics clean up a little bit when he does that. Release is a little long, kind of gets his arm back and down at times, especially when he's loading up to throw. You definitely see him load up to throw downfield. Again, not a guy that just flicks the ball. But all in all, again, one of the things that you're getting with him is you're getting a guy with a full season of starting experience who, in terms of adjusted completion percentage, is 73.6% adjusted completion percentage, and won some games, was able to manage an offense, be a team leader, and win games at the Conference USA level. I mean, winning at places like App State, right? I mean, Carolina had their own trouble winning at App State in the past. So, he has shown the ability over the course of a full season to be a productive dual threat player who you can win games with. And I think that's really what they're going for here, is a guy that they feel can come in, already has that season under his belt, and be that kind of player for them day one.
Yeah, he's a young guy. You mentioned the 1 year of experience. Of course, that LSU game, it doesn't get any tougher there playing in App State. He ran circles around App State's defense there. I mentioned the youth factor. He's got 3 years of eligibility. Bryce Baker's got 4 years of eligibility. Alturi Newkirk, brand new as well. So you've got a young quarterback room. The trick is Baker has been through spring practice. Lopez arrives in Chapel Hill, whenever he arrives, he's not going to have that month of spring practice. I think that's very big, especially not only is he learning a new offense, he's going to be coached by guys that are new to the college game as well. Jason, just sort of speak to that aspect of this whole thing for North Carolina.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but not being around for spring is a big deal. It's huge. I mean, for one, you're not accustomed to throwing to the same group of wide receivers and tight ends and backs and all that you would be able to throw to if you had been there for the spring. You get a comfort level throwing to those same guys. Now, you can build some of that during the summer. That's true, but there is a difference between doing that in that context and doing it with the pads on and with coaching and in the context of the offense in the spring. There's no doubt about that. But the bigger factor here is anytime you are starting in a new offense, anytime you're picking up a new offense, you're effectively learning a new language. So, for example, how good's your Spanish?
Come see, come sa. It is not very good. It is not good enough. I will say that.
No bueno. Okay, got you.
Accurate.
So here's the thing. If let's just take an example here. If for whatever reason we decided at Inside Carolina that you were going to have to host these podcasts in Spanish next year, starting in September, would you feel, how much more comfortable would you be if you just sort of had to review and, kind of learn Spanish over the course of May, June, and July, and then get thrown in to some level of real practice in August, and then start right there in September? How much would you prefer, instead of that, having, say, 3 months of immersion? Let's say we're going to move you to a Latin American country for 3 months in the spring to practice and to really get that immersion time to learn that language. How much of a difference do you think that would make for you?
Yeah, I will go and I'll learn a lot. But I love the reference and the analogy there, because it is so fitting. It is perfect when what we're talking about here for Lopez's ability to acclimate and to learn the language.
And some guys learn languages faster than others. There's no doubt about that. Some guys learn offenses faster than others. And by the way, the more offenses that you've had to learn, the more transfer there is. Although sometimes you get interference of like, oh yeah, I forgot that term means that in this offense, it meant that in another offense. So sometimes that happens. But you learn faster. I mean, this is why guys in the NFL, although a lot of NFL teams have very similar verbiage, I mean, because guys move around so much, they've had to kind of converge. But you get guys that have played, for 4 different offenses in the NFL, and that guy moves to a new offense and he can pick it up a lot faster, partly because he's learned 4 other offenses. He's got that practice of learning it, and partly because, that's what they do as a full-time job, right? But if he immerses himself hardcore over the summer and just really works on that, and then gets into the virtual reality booth or room or whatever that I'm sure they're going to have ready for him to try to learn all this stuff, I mean, he can get there. But the truth of the matter is he's just going to be less fluent than if he'd had the extra few months of working with these coaches during the spring. Because it's not just spring practice. You're as a quarterback especially, you're meeting with your coaches and having preliminary installation and learning the offense, and you're able to go in and ask questions and all of that during the spring. You're just getting extra months of that. And then you get into camp and you go through full install. And then you go through and you practice with the guys that you're going to be throwing to. And you're going through the steps of gaining fluency within that offense. And if you lose that, that's just an enormous handicap. That's an enormous, you're behind the 8 ball coming in without that. It's just a lot harder. That doesn't make it impossible, but it is a big advantage to have spring practice, and it's a pretty significant disadvantage not to have that. And, honestly, the 2 thoughts that I had when I was watching Lopez, and this is not a knock on him. I mean, I've already made it clear that there's a lot to like there. But when I was watching him, one of the first things that came to mind is there's certain things here that remind me of Jacoby Criswell. Now, Jacoby has a much stronger arm and less touch as a downfield thrower. Jacoby on deep balls, we saw last year, he struggled with that. But in other respects, Jacoby actually probably a stronger prospect in terms of as a true thrower, and in terms of build and all that, real similar. Jacoby's just a little bit heavier, but as a runner, pretty similar players. I mean, I think Lopez is a little bit more dynamic as a runner, but if I'd had my choice between Jacoby Criswell having gone through the spring and Lopez joining now, in all honesty, I'd have probably taken Jacoby. And especially Jacoby has a year of starting in your offense with some of the guys that he'd be throwing to this year. So that's one where I'm looking at that with a kind of hindsight as 2020. I probably wouldn't have just told that guy to go, or if that's what they did. But that's one I kind of I think thinking about it. If I were on that coaching staff, I'd be like, kind of wish we had that one back. In terms of persuading him to stay on after they got in. And the second thing is when you're looking at Lopez as a prospect, he, without the advantage of spring, I'm not sure that Bryce Baker is not going to be ahead of him in the end of all this. Because Baker is a more, he's got a lot more potential as a thrower in terms of being able to make all the throws, to be able to do all that damage from the pocket. Baker has a much higher ceiling, and without the spring, even with a season of experience, I'm not sure how much ahead he's gonna be if Baker really puts in the time during the summer. So that's another thing that kind of crossed my mind here. But on the flip side, like I said, what you are getting is you're getting a guy who's got a full year of productivity and leadership and success as a starting quarterback at the college football level. And he, has another year prior to that. He's been in college for 2 years. You've got the maturity there, and you've got the maturity of a guy who's started and succeeded for a full season. So maybe that's enough to be ahead of Baker. But without the spring, I think this is going to be a real competition in the fall, because Baker has a chance to make some strides. He's got to get there in terms of gaining fluency. Right now, Baker is in he's in Spanish 1 he's done Spanish 1 coming out of the spring, and he's still got a long way to go. But, can he get up to speed enough to be able to make quick decisions? If so, I think he's significantly higher ceiling as a thrower. Doesn't have the same kind of dynamic dual threat stuff, but that's going to make this interesting in terms of the quarterback competition going into next year.
Spoken like a true educator. A lot of work to do for Gio Lopez, a lot of work to do for North Carolina. Transfer portal still open, still spinning, still churning. Inside Carolina is all over it. We'll be all over it. The beat writers, Don, Jason, me, everybody doing all these emergency podcasts. It's a fun time. When we got the sweatshirts that said there is no off season, we meant it. There's no offseason in Inside Carolina. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt. Shout out to Big Game USA and the official game ball of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Shout out to Jason. We'll be back soon, I'm sure. Talk something about a new player or a past player or something to do with Carolina football over the next few weeks. There is no offseason. Thanks, Jason.
No puedo hablar español ahora.